Ever since South Sudan gained independence, we have been faced by many challenges, most acute as security issues. Multiple unresolved issues with the government in Khartoum continue to plague stability in the region. Internal security problems have also demanded overwhelming focus by authorities in South Sudan. This has precluded our young nation from addressing social and developmental concerns, which had been our intent. Rather than focusing on the deeper explanation of the reality on the ground, there has been a tendency for all involved to focus on the exchange of accusations and counter-accusations about the alleged support of governments to insurgents inside each other's territory. The government of Sudan has consistently made accusations that South Sudan has provided support to rebel groups in Sudan. Accusations have been used as a pretext to strike inside South Sudan territory and undermine the progress of implementing agreements. From our understanding, these allegations by the government of Sudan about Spla's support to insurgents in Sudan are just a distraction. Regrettably, some of these allegations are on many occasions treated as credible.
وفد جنوب السودان يأتي بأجندات غير محددة وكأنما هنالك قوة خارجية تسير هذه الأجندة لأن لها هدف واضح هو يمكن من الأهداف الواضحة القضاء على حكومة الشمال كما يزعمون يعني.
The situation that these accusations are associated with have long histories and deep explanations. The government in Khartoum have tried to confuse the understanding of the current situation through a strong communication strategy. Manipulating the press, they have equated the relationship between the government in Juba with the SPLA North to their own relationship with the various proxy forces and militia that operate in South Sudan, trying to destabilize our young nation. Bitter at the loss of total control over oil resources and under heavy criticism by extreme factions in the government and society, since South Sudan's independence, the government in Khartoum has continued to support militias in South Sudan. Unlike the accusation by Khartoum of Juba's military lethal support of the SPLA North, there is a large body of evidence proving beyond a doubt that the government in Khartoum has been arming, facilitating, and financing insurgent groups in South Sudan. Massive numbers of weapons, either captured from insurgents during internal security operations or handed over after groups have negotiated and reconciled with Juba, provide the most direct link between insurgents in South Sudan and the government in Khartoum. The insurgent leaders themselves admit and attest to the links.
جيتو بالمدافعات وجيتو كفاءة بتاع عسكري كل عندي انا جيت بو زي ما قلت شعبينه ان شاء الله بعد شويه تشوف في التلفزيون ان شاء الله.
Since the beginning of the CPA period, the government of South Sudan, with the clear leadership of President Salva Kiir, has focused on negotiation and compromise. Including key amnesties, the government in Juba has strived to use diplomatic tools to resolve outstanding internal political disaccord and grievances. This strategy of compromise has been key in South Sudan resolving some major internal issues, despite Khartoum's continued attempts to undermine and destabilize the government in Juba through its blatant arming of insurgent militias. We will expect the government in Khartoum to emulate a similar strategy to deal with their own internal security problems, rather than continue to accuse South Sudan and others for these problems. The evidence of this arming comes from international researchers and journalists who have documented the weapons and interviewed the leaders of the various insurgent armed groups in South Sudan. Although not enough of this kind of independent analysis is readily available to the public, groups such as Small Arms Surveys and others have provided strong and rigorous documented evidence of the ties between the Sudan government and insurgent groups in South Sudan. More quietly, a much deeper body of evidence has been presented and conveyed to international institutions and governments. Despite this, the accusation by Khartoum continue to be given credence by some governments and various international bodies. Supporting such insurgents is not a new occurrence. There is a long history of direct support by Khartoum to militia groups in South Sudan. This was first made bluntly evident when the forces of the late General Paulino Matip negotiated their integration into the SPLA not long after the CPA in 2006 through the Juba Declaration. Groups loyal to other leaders that had historically opposed the SPLA during the Civil War negotiated their entry into the South Sudan military, also bringing with them major cache of weapons acquired from the government in Khartoum. This has long been a core tactics of the Sudanese military and has been documented in Darfur and other areas of Sudan where conflict and war continue. Later, the defection and return of other insurgent forces into the SPLA saw massive amounts of weapons and support that had been provided by Khartoum. The most recent case that shows the lethal support provided to dissident groups inside South Sudan territory is the negotiated return of the South Sudan Liberation Army. Two main groups are currently negotiating the exact terms of their integration into the South Sudan government and society. The majority of their weapons were acquired from sources in the government of Sudan, particularly the military. They have presented these armaments for the world to examine, and the scale of Khartoum's arming of this group is utterly shocking. With origins in Iran, Ukraine, Belarus, Libya, and other sources, the arms placed on display by the armed groups now negotiating their return to the fold in South Sudan is undeniable evidence of Khartoum support. Finally, and most importantly, the words of the leaders of these groups speak to this fact.
kalam da saka nasal bugal guwa btayo na bapin na munu namshi bi malisi mabila abila ما بيعرف طبعا تجادلين كارلو طبعا رزول بكلم كثير كارلو زي المام طبعا كارلو قال له شنو بيشيلنا ابيلا وانا جنوبي ما انا ماشي جنوبي تو كان انتم سلام معكم معكم جنوب ما بنخرب سلامكم انا كمان ماشي نتكلم مع اخواننا ونمشي صوفي مالا انا قلت له ابيلا ما في بيشيلني ابيلا انا ماشي جنوب ماشي جنوب
ما أقول زي ده حتى من ديت الاستخبارات دولة السودان يا وجه كلم معنا قال أنتم أمشي شدم يتحدث مع دولة الجنوب نجي سلام لأنه جاء حصل في سلام يا وسبب
Over time, concerned actors have on a number of occasions treated various claims by Khartoum as credible. In this case, these accusations have served for Khartoum the purpose of covering up the reality on the ground. The SPLA has come to recognize that this continuous accusation and counter-accusation must be put to rest because these exchanges have not yielded anything other than confusion and also preclude any progress in resolving the fundamental political issues between Juba and Khartoum. In the spirit of good faith, the government of South Sudan has consistently engaged with all parties, and we deem it necessary to stop the confusion, stop all the rhetoric, and clearly state our understanding of the situation on the ground with supporting evidence. A similar and honest expression of understanding from all parties concerned is a necessary starting point for substantive real progress in negotiation and, most importantly, the implementation of the existing agreements. The NCP government's efforts at destabilizing peace and security in the Republic of South Sudan and the region is revealed by a large body of evidence. The following are details of radio intercepts, observed supply of proxy insurgents, including the testimonies of numerous defectors. Many officers and NCOs have defected from Sudan government-associated militias. These men are South Sudanese, and they decided to support the development of South Sudan and to stop their engagement with the government in Khartoum, which was hurting their brothers and sisters. Through negotiations, these individuals and their supporters were convinced to support the goal of building a strong Republic of South Sudan. And as a testament to their newfound commitment, they have brought with them large quantities of equipment given to them by the government of Sudan and information about the efforts to undermine South Sudan still underway. Here are some key incidences illustrating the scale of the Sudanese government's support to insurgents inside South Sudan. On the 5th June 2011, the SPLA forces intercepted a message in which the Sudan Armed Forces Director for Operations gave orders to the Operation Commander in Muglad to issue Chief Abdelbagi Ayi ammunition and facilitate him to conduct attacks in northern Barghazal. On the 19th of June 2012, armed forces from Anyuak Ugat attacked the areas of Kaka Tijaria. When pursued, they crossed back into the Republic of Sudan's territory for sanctuary. During the pursuit, several members of the group were captured, along with arms and a vehicle mounted with a 12.7 millimeter machine gun belonging to the Sudan Armed Forces. On the 5th May 2012, Major General John Dwet and Brigadier General James Duot Lam reported themselves to the SPLA forces of Division 1. They were actually sent by Sudan Armed Forces to attack the SPLA positions, but instead surrendered, and they came with 8 Toyota Land Cruisers mounted with 12.7 millimeters, 1 lorry full of military equipment, and 1 Ural trucks mounted with Zu-23, and 1 B-10. On the 20th June 2012, in another message intercept, the SPLA determined that the Sudan Armed Forces sent helicopter to airdrop supplies to the forces of David Yao Yao, along with orders to intensify his destabilizing activity throughout Jonglei State. Witnesses confirmed the airdrop, and subsequent to the intercept, Yao Yao's forces increased their attacks on communities and local government positions. On the 20th of June 2012, Major Galwak Thol Wall, a medical officer, and Second Lieutenant Kompo Kulang reported with their weapons to the SPLA in Mayom. They indicated they had come from Kilo 23, a main base of militia activities. On the 13th of August 2012, 11 militia members defected from Kilo 23. They reported to the SPLA with their weapons, and their names are Second Lieutenant Mobile Pork Palat, Regimental Sergeant Major Santino Powell Yen, Regimental Sergeant Major Galwak Bideth Jok, Regimental Sergeant Major Tong Thiang Nub, Regimental Sergeant Major Jan Lam Mashar, Sergeant Kwot Yen Bayak, Sergeant Deng Lul Malek, Lance Corporal Kwang Manyuon Chwol, Lance Corporal Galwak Nyuat Biliu, Lance Corporal Luol Wel Mayar, and Private Wek Mawar Akol. On the 22nd of April 2013, militia leaders Bapin, Montuel, Carlo Kwol, and Matthew Puljang responded to the amnesty offered by President Salva Kiir. They came to the SPLA bringing with them large amounts of armament, which they explained had been provided to them by the Sudan Armed Forces in order to destabilize South Sudan's border areas with Sudan. Some key examples include 43 Land Cruisers mounted with 12.7 millimeter, 4 Land Cruisers mounted with 107 BM rocket launcher with multiple barrel, 4 Land Cruisers mounted with SPG-9, 5 Land Cruisers mounted with B-10, 1 Land Cruiser mounted with 106, 6 Land Cruisers mounted with Milan anti-tank, 1 Hino lorry mounted with Grat, 3 Hino lorries mounted with Zu-23 anti-aircraft, 1 Hino lorry mounted with Rubai, 1 truck for water tank, 13 Land Cruisers carrying assorted armament and armors with other military items, 6 Hino lorry carrying assorted military equipment, 12 vehicles loaded with different military equipment. On the 7th June 2013, a message number 2099 was intercepted by the SPLA, and in the message, the Director of Military Intelligence for the Sudan Armed Forces gave orders to the head of operation in Muglad to direct the militia forces of Gayech to launch destabilizing operations in the areas of Unity State, which is well inside South Sudan's sovereign territory. On the 9th June 2013, militia leader Johnson Ulony accepted the amnesty offered by President Salva Kiir, and he reported to the SPLA with more than 3,000 militia fighters, multiple vehicles, and trucks all mounted with machine gun. All these vehicles and equipment were given to Ulony's group by Sudan Armed Forces. Find here in the details. 22 Toyota Land Cruisers mounted with 12.7 millimeter, 3 Toyota Land Cruisers mounted with 82 millimeter anti-tank, 1 Toyota Land Cruiser mounted with 107 rocket artillery, 3 Toyota Land Cruiser not mounted, 1 Ural truck mounted with Zu-23 anti-aircraft, and 1 20 millimeter mortar, 5 82 millimeter mortar. On the 12th of June 2013, the SPLA intercepted radio communications by Major General Muhammad Umar Abu Rahma sent to the 14th and 22nd Divisions based in Babanusa and copied to all units. The message directed the deployment of increased forces along the border and to concurrently send militia forces inside South Sudan along with clandestine agents to destabilize South Sudan. Various documents have been recovered that lay bare the direction of various armed groups by the Sudan Armed Forces to conduct operations to destabilize South Sudan, which are direct provocations to which could lead to war. One such example is an internal memo by the Sudan Armed Forces Director of Military Intelligence, as shown here. It reads as follows: Ministry of National Defense, Joint Command Headquarters, Department of Military Intelligence and Security, Office of the Director, date 11th March 2013, internal memo. To Brigadier General PSC Mohammed Osman, Director of Administration for Special Operations. Greetings. Kindly send us weekly report before Thursday and should contain the following points. A. Movement of Yao Yao's forces from their areas of operation having been defeated by the SPLA forces, which should include losses in details. B. Mention petroleum companies that have stood with the Republic of South Sudan's government. C. Determine the status of SPLA's withdrawal from all the demilitarized zones as required by the agreement. Please give complete and comprehensive details. Regards, very urgent, Lieutenant General PSC Mahjoub Ahmed Abdallah Sharfi, Director of Intelligence and Security. It must be recalled that the concerned parties have on numerous occasions, beginning with the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, agreed to terms that resolve the issues that now appear to be outstanding. The confusion of the back and forth accusation has distracted many from what has already been agreed to. We have had enough, and we are no longer going to accept and tolerate this game. The bottom line is, the government in Khartoum needs to face its own internal issues and leave us to deal with our own internal issues. We are a sovereign state, and continued meddling and interferences can no longer be accepted. The government of South Sudan and the SPLA will endeavor to continue working towards peaceful solutions to security challenges. At the same time, the SPLA and the government of South Sudan stands resolutely prepared to defend the sovereignty of our nation from all threats, foreign or domestic. This has been a communication from the SPLA General Headquarters in Juba, the Republic of South Sudan.